Good evening, Galleon. This is Mayor Tom O'Leary. Thank you for being patient. I think patience is something we're all going to need to have a lot of over the next few weeks, it appears. Sometimes when we do these Monday night shows, I don't have an idea of what we're going to talk about before we go on and sort of wing it. You know, sometimes viewers can tell he must be winging it. Tonight I really have something. I want to thank Chris, who commented on Talk About Galleon on our efforts to try and inform the state legislature, and it was sort of, I don't know, tongue-in-cheek at least, about our technology and our ability to use technology. So I think comment was something like, what did he do? Record this, print it, and then put it in the mail. Of course not. What we did at the state representative's request is to just shoot a YouTube and send it to him. He received it and he was able to incorporate the ideas. Whether he is successful in the ideas that we offered up, he was able to incorporate those. So what took, I think we were figuring before we came on air, I think it took a half hour from start to finish to do that. We were able to have specific information to the state representative as they were working on the legislation that they're going to vote on tomorrow. So we'll see how local governments fare, both in what Columbus does to provide some cushion for all of us over the next few weeks, and also, although we're not obsessed about what Washington has in store or doesn't have in store for us, I think it could be important in terms of providing some relief for local governments. So really that was the purpose of doing it. We may not be TV ready or prime time ready, but I think we're using this medium pretty effectively, and I was glad to get some specific ideas to our state representatives about things that will help keep our utility funds and our general fund solvent and buoyant over the next who knows how many weeks. So again, thanks to Chris, and it's funny with Talk About Galleon. It's almost got like Galleon Live did, where everybody loved to hate it, but everybody read it. So I don't know what the community would do without that group site to go on and ask questions about, sometimes rant about. And while I don't enjoy being the guy with the target on, I do understand the tremendous frustration that we're all feeling and the amount of uncertainty that's out there. And so we're going to do the best we can to keep you informed. And so let's get on with the show, as they say. I don't know if there are any questions or not.
We have some actually left over from Friday's video.
Yeah, we had, I don't know how many, 3,000. There are a bunch of people watched that. So if you haven't, certainly one of the cool things about the mediums, you can go back and watch this. Might give you context for some of the questions and really help you understand better what the city's been working on and what our plan is for the next at least 2 weeks, and then 4 weeks, and then 6 weeks. So anyways, let's try to answer questions. I thought there were some good questions that came in throughout that Friday live stream.
Mm-hmm. And this first one...
Hey, wait a second, Matt. Trish Factor, thank you. I mean, she did, I think, a very, very good job as our city health commissioner, explaining maybe to some one more time in terms of the detail of what we should be doing. But I thought that was outstanding. I'm glad she did that. And my expectation is, depending on how this twists and turns, meaning this whole coronavirus epidemic / pandemic, anyways, depending on how that twists and turns, we'll probably utilize this medium to get Trish on again to provide updated information. So sorry for the digression, but there were a lot of good questions, and heck, we ran an hour, and I think what caused us to go off the air and not answer these questions is you could see people just dropping off. I thought, well, let's save the questions. We'll be back on Monday night, so here we are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This first one came from William, and it may have been addressed on Friday, but I just wanted to make sure that we did at least, make sure that we touched on it. How equipped are the first responders? Do they have the right personal protective equipment? And then second part of the question is, how is the city preventing roughly half of the workforce and our safety forces from getting sick?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, they have the necessary, on the fire side, which is the EMS side, they have the necessary masks and certainly gloves. If I'm not mistaken, the standard PPE for the police department are gloves. I think what we don't anticipate needing to have patrolmen with masks on every time they approach somebody on a traffic stop or their general line of business. I do think what will probably happen is where there's a situation where there's some escalated tempers or there's some personal injury that will probably make sure they have enough masks. But our focus on masks is a lot like what you hear in the rest of the media, and that's to make sure that Avita has sufficient numbers. And while we're not driving that or directing that activity, we're keeping in touch with Avita to make sure they're sufficiently supplied. So, yes, the rest of our guys and gals that are going to be out in the public, that are going to be having any contact, we'll make sure that they do as well. But the goal is to not have that level of contact. So, hope that answers it.
Yes, thank you. Next question I had left over came from Jerry. He asked, are the city's investments able to be used for unforeseen problems like this?
Yeah, I saw that question right after we went off, and I thought that was, an outstanding question. Jerry asked some questions. Sometimes, I want to shake his hand or wring his neck. I guess I'm not allowed to do any of that these days, but that's a really good question. And the short answer to that is our fund balances, is what he's referring to, are invested. And one of the most important day-to-day challenges over the next few weeks is to make sure that those funds, particularly the water and sewer funds, aren't hit too bad by a reduction in revenues. In other words, people stop paying their bills. But that's really, in many respects, one of the lessons learned from fiscal emergency, is that we needed to keep sufficient fund balances for not for this kind of emergency, but a situation in which we would have a severe interruption of our cash flow. And you're a stockholder as a citizen or a customer of ours in several multi-million-dollar businesses. So I think, while I know you'll look at it like you do, our customers do, they look at their own household first. I think it's important to note that these are small businesses that we're all participants in, and we need to pay our utilities as we would responsibly, and not have too many of our customers take what might be a premium holiday or something of that sort. So anyway, Jerry's right. That's what we have the fund balances for. And as we see reduced revenue for a lot of reasons that I absolutely understand, because if you don't have income, I'm not sure how you pay anyone, much less, the city utility office. But as we see that decline in revenue, that's one of the things that having those fund balances, those investments, if you will, and Auditor Trish and myself have talked about how, without getting into too much silly talk, how liquid we need those investments so that as there is a drawdown in that cash, we're able to convert our investments into cash as we, ride it out. I've heard that. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to scream. But as we try to manage through this. So, good question. I'll try not to over-answer it.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. On Friday, we also had a lot of people concerned about supply shortages, especially at the grocery stores. I don't know if you want to hit on that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. I've been, quite honestly, I'm batting zero in terms of getting a grocery store to town. I find that very frustrating. So what I think is a practical matter is that if as few things go on as normal, I think what you'll see is a pretty steady flow of groceries and other key supplies, and it's everybody said it, but they say it because it's true. Everybody in terms of politicians grandstanding to talk but not really do much about it. The really great thanks to the people working in the grocery stores and working in all those kinds of professions that are now deemed essential. So no, I think you'll be able to buy food, and I don't know how long any business is going to be able to maintain, and I'm speaking there in terms of restaurants, simply on carry-out alone. So the sooner we can see the stats trend down, and perhaps then those people who are describing this as a war will somehow give us a sense of an exit plan, and then we can know how long we're planning for. So.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Yeah.
And I just want to point out, we just had a comment from Eric on that. He said Drug Mart is rocking it.
Yeah. I mean, they're helping out in that sense. Yeah, I really agree. They're a great company. The only cool thing about being without Geyers or some comparable grocery store the last couple of years, we got used to this crap. So I'm not very happy about it. We haven't discontinued our efforts to expand grocery offerings in Guyan, whether it's Drug Mart or someone else. But it's we got this thing called the pandemic that's interrupted a lot of plans. But as I said Friday, I'll say it again. I tend to be a rebel. I tried to get Trish Factor to say she was a rebel too, but she wouldn't admit to it. But I tend to be a rebel. I think most people know that. And this is not a time to be nonconformists. This is not a time to argue with the public, Ohio Director of Health and others about the severity of this. It's severe because we've had the types of restrictions put in place in this public health emergency. So whether you believe it's earth-threatening, the virus itself, or not, we need to be compliant, and so that's the message. I'm probably, as much as anyone you'll talk to today, I feel like raising heck and yelling at the TV and all those sorts of things, but it doesn't serve much of a useful purpose. And so what we're trying to do is make long-term planning to allow us to pay our bills and stay solvent in view of the fact that we have some pretty harsh estimates of what our revenue going forward will look like. So, we have any decent questions? If not, I'll ramble on about those 4 sources of income so you get an idea, but we probably have to answer somebody's question.
Just a small point of clarification.
Yeah.
For Sheila, she mentioned with this statewide stay-at-home issue, they say you can go outside and walk. She asked, so if I'm walking and I get out into the street, will I be stopped by the law? I think the purpose, I talked with the chief about his shifting to putting more patrolmen and other officers in the street, and it's really for visibility. So I gotta believe, and I do believe, that
that being hassled just for the sake of hassling folks isn't going to be. We made it clear as it relates to expired tags, expired driver's license. That in and of itself isn't going to be a reason, if stopped, to ticket you or, act too aggressively. So, anyways, now we're not going to be looking for problems, but we are going to be concerned about property damage at this time of night, and as it gets later, people who are desperate in the first place will perhaps try to get really desperate, and we need to protect people the best we can. So.
Thanks, Mayor. Next question tonight came from Mary Ann.
Nobody wants to talk about those 4 key sources of revenue of municipal finance? Okay, never mind.
Guess not. Okay, Mary Ann asked, has anyone locally been infected?
Not that we know of. And I think I mentioned this Friday, I'll repeat it. Over the past handful of years, there's been a discussion, city health department, join the county health department, back and forth. And I think currently, I'm really glad we have a city health department because they're able to be on top of the information. We're able to staff and meet daily our own emergency operating center so that information can get shared, scarcity of supplies can get shared. All I'm going to do right here is take about 20 seconds and repeat what, if you've watched this stuff on TV, you're going to roll your eyes when you begin to hear this. Because the testing in Ohio started out so that individual tests early on in this process were sent to private labs who were then, shall we say, overwhelmed and weren't able to increase their throughput like the Ohio Department of Health's lab has been able to. There are some tests out there, I mean less than a handful, that are individuals that have been tested, but we have no results. The one I know about in our general area is a Galion area address of an individual residing outside the city. So that gives you a sense of what's out there in terms of tests that we've yet to receive an answer on. And like if you've been watching TV, you know kind of how that protocol works. The health department will get the information, share that with the Ohio Department of Health, get that logged into this overall statewide base, and then the health department will share that information with local officials. But there's it's an odd stigma on this thing for something that's only been around for a few weeks. So I think it's important to protect somebody's identity. I mean, particularly if they tested negative. I don't want to know who that couple was that was under investigation for a week. So anyways, that's how we'll know. And the short answer to that question is there's one that we know of, that the health department knows of, that I think must have been tested here by a provider or authorized by a local provider, and but lives outside the city. Does that answer it?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
We also had a question earlier regarding the council meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
I've already answered that. Yes, there will be a council meeting tomorrow at 7. But do you want to talk a little bit about the format?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's going to be live streamed to people who have the opportunity. So yeah, I get it. If you don't have, God, what are they called? Smartphones or any type of personal computer, it's going to be hard to live stream it. What you'll find for people who want to watch it later is just use this YouTube thing. So if you know how to get a hold of these broadcasts, you'll know how to be able to get this, and it'll probably be. I expect it'll go on an hour, folks. It's not to like put you to sleep early or whatever. But as it turns out, we're going to try to do a number of things at that meeting in anticipation of sort of medium to worst case outcomes insofar as how disrupting this is to our operations daily, our ability to pass legislation, and more particularly, if our financial situation is wrecked, as some worry it might be, then we'll have passed some legislation that gives some flexibility to continue operating. So, anyways, it's going to be a long agenda, and as you said, Matt, you'll be able to watch it at home. And thank goodness we have some capability to get that done. And it's nothing. It's like the person mocking me for doing that YouTube to send to the state rep. It's not. I mean, it's nothing special, but it's the best we have, and I think it works both ways with organizations like the Inquirer and other newspapers. I don't know. I'm not. I suspect that we have print media that are watching this, and we know every single time all the print media watch this. If it's not live, they watch it in the YouTube video format. So, yep, I know it's not much to look at, but at least I know I know a lot about having done this government thing on your behalf for about 40 years. So. You have another question? I'm going to tell a story. If not, I am going to tell a story anyways. I was thinking about in the early 80s when I was first elected county commissioner, and what absolute chaos the county was in. We were real short of money, and on top of that, the then president of the Bucyrus Chamber of Commerce ran a referendum petition to repeal the sales tax that we put on to be able to operate on an emergency basis. And so from a financial management point of view, from a public finance point of view, this reminds me a lot of that period in our county in 84 and 85. And it's funny, you listen to other so-called experts talk about 87 and, they remember the dot-com bubble and an 08, and I'm thinking, man, I'm one of the few guys that remember what it was like in the early 80s in Crawford County and before that. So, we'll get through it, but I think it will help those people who are our customers in the city or are residents in the city or taxpayers, license plate purchasers and surcharge. I'm very confident that being around the block many times now, that we're going to be able to come up with some solutions that will help us get through this, and so that's kind of my approach. I don't know, but anyways, back in '84, it really stunk. That was that was the point of that story. So, anyways, what do you got? Any other questions?
No questions right now. So, if anybody else has anything, please submit it.
I'm going to talk then, until we get a question, about two items that I didn't touch on yet. What taxpayers can expect about staffing over the next several weeks. We look carefully at the order that the Department of Health, the governor, whomever you want to attribute or blame for the order yesterday, the kind of shelter in place, whatever you want to call it. All of municipal government is an essential service. So one of the things that we had been working internally on before that determination was made is who are actually essential within the city. And so of all the employees that operate underneath the appointment of the mayor or service director, all of those employees, having been defined as essential by the governor, will continue to report to work. We're going to, as soon as possible, implement a at-the-door temperature taking. If somebody has a high fever, we've got a protocol that will take care of that. This afternoon, service director issued to all the employees a summary of the health guidance. I guess that's obligatory, but more importantly, it gave a breakdown of all the various leave types that our employees have and what's the appropriate type of leave to use based on what circumstance. Like if you have a sick kid, or if you're sick, or you've got a daycare issue, there's so we're handling that, and while it may be more complicated and may seem, well, I wish I had that where I work, it is probably more complicated in some employers, and it's all a part of the collective bargaining agreement. It's been around for generations or decades, certainly. So anyway, staffing, everybody will be on duty. As people become ill, we will, certainly manage that the best we can. I'm going to stay on that subject for a second. Among the things we're doing to plan in the event that this goes on for several weeks is that we're trying to arrange, I wouldn't call it cross-training. That might be a little extreme. But we're getting employees, licensed employees at our filtration plant and our wastewater treatment plants, familiar with Bucyrus's operation, and to the extent we can include Crestline on the sewer side, we'll do that, and their employees trained likewise. Now, both communities are enlisting veteran employees, people who have worked for us. In our world, we had I think 3 or 4, I know at least 3 of our wastewater treatment plant operators leave in the last year or so, and we've replaced them with a new group. So I don't think that we'll be as have as thin a bench, if you'll accept that sports term. All those sports analogies seem to have gone away. On the water side, we don't have a lot of operators, and so our worry is, as one may become infected and have to stay off a site for 2 weeks, our ability to utilize overtime and find alumni employees or previously licensed employees be a little bit constrained. And so that's another thing we're trying to do to fill that staffing equation. I think everyone would agree with this, that we've got to keep licensed operators. When you turn on that faucet, one of the things you expect from us is that it's clean, quality water, and that you don't have to worry about for some yet unforeseen reason that's rationed. The worst would be that we had to get in that situation because we couldn't adequately staff it. Last thing I'd say about staffing in those key utility areas is that we've reached out to a variety of consultant firms or people who do wastewater treatment and water filtration staffing for smaller communities, and do it on a contract basis. One of the pieces of legislation tomorrow night will be an additional authority to spend in the event that we get to that contracted out area. So I don't want to overdo that and turn people off, but we have really looked at waves of staffing that would happen if this is a prolonged pandemic, and that we're in these isolation circumstances for 90 days plus. So that's I think one real important consideration that I think people are if they're concerned, they have a right to be. If they're not, I only want to say that we're looking downstream and trying to be as creative with the limited resources we have to keep those key functions going. The other part, just want to talk for a couple minutes. I'd rather go long and have everybody turn it off than to not get into some of these things. It's important when you look at the city's revenue. It's a $20 million business, probably a little bit more. And we have 4 key sources of revenue. I think that are pretty important, and I'll try to isolate those if I can. They are largely income tax that you'll see provide the funding for our safety forces and for a large portion of what people would think of as our street department in funding street repairs, contracts, and the like. So the income tax, I think most people, thing they like least about it in this community is RETA, but that income tax is super important to maintaining those safety forces that I think are fundamental to what we do for you. Couple things about income taxes. One, that if you're on unemployment, you don't have to pay income tax. So those people who successfully get on unemployment, we are not going to see any income tax from them. And so we expect to see a pretty significant reduction in the revenue that we use to operate. I mean, straight up, that is a lot less important to you whether you can pay your income tax than it is whether you've got income coming in. And I'm not confused about that. I'm not unsympathetic in any way. So I think that's an important issue with the income tax, to note that, and that we expect to see that number go down significantly. Next big source of income for us are gasoline and license plate taxes. And I don't want to go into a long explanation, but those revenues are going to be cut into significantly, and so we're doing some things to look at moving ahead with some projects that we have large state and federal funding as a portion of it. I don't want to lose those projects we've worked hard for, so we made contact with some funding resources, and so I'm pretty optimistic that we'll be able to move ahead in the area of street paving, and particularly the big Harding Way project this year and the Portland Way project next year. Although I don't expect these quarantines and such to go on into next year, this recovery period, getting back on our feet financially, I don't want that to cause us to lose $3 million plus in state funds. So the second big source of funds are the gas tax and the license plate fees, and those will it'll get pretty arid around here for those. And then I divide the next two sources of income into kind of, it's really one and the same, but they are the water and sewer funds. And those fund balances, those rate structures raise a significantly smaller amount of money than the third utility that I think is pretty important to discuss tonight, and that's the electric fund. And so we're looking very closely at managing both expenses and trying to be creative about ways that we can maintain revenue as we move through this 60, 90-day period. Our expectation is that we'll see a significant drop in water and sewer. One of the tough things about the way our bill operates, too, is that you can't separate the electric from those others. So I mentioned Friday. I think it's true. I think people who listened to that and then shared that, we've been in a no shut-off period since October, I believe, of last year, probably November. And some people will crow about how they haven't paid a bill since October. You know, I wouldn't be announcing that as if I was proud of it, but it's true. We don't shut people off during the winter. What we're going to do is work with those people who have now fallen on tough times. And what we'll do is build payment arrangements for those people who always pay their bill and gotten really racked by this. They get an unemployment check. They don't do something in Columbus, that unemployment check's going to be no more than half of what they were making. And if they were a higher wage employee, it'll be less than half they were making. So I'm a realist in knowing that if I got to buy other absolute necessities, and the good old city of Galion ain't going to shut me off for whatever set of reasons, we can debate that. We're not going to shut people off. We're going to work with them. we can't give you free electric or free water or sewer, but we're going to work with you to keep the service on and then come up with a workable, manageable way for each customer that finds himself in that situation to work their way out of it. There's a couple wisecrackers out there that will say, oh yeah, like Geyers. And if sometime when we have a half hour to talk about that, I'll debate with anybody this Geyers situation. But they were functioning in the same sort of payment arrangement like everyone else that sees themselves falling behind. This sounds a real boss hog, but under my administration, we've done this for a number of years, not shut people off in the winter, and we're darn proud of that record, and we're real proud of how our fellow citizens pay their bill off in the vast majority of cases. So we're going to do the same thing we've been doing and do the best we can. I'm getting point. Matt must have a question, huh?
Yes.
So those are the 4 big revenue sources, and it's important, and each one of those will be adversely affected. The other one you might consider state and grants and funding. That comes and goes like warm weather. So the other are core resources, and we really need those, and we're attending to those in order to keep the city rolling. We worked our tails off. I know, Matt, you got a question. We really worked hard. Now you can think, oh yeah, worked hard. You don't know what hard work is, but to get this community out of fiscal emergency. And so we're not going down without being creative and doing some things to keep us afloat. And in a weird way, I kind of like the challenge. So I'm not going to run and hide under a sack. We've got a lot of work to do. And last thing I say before we get back to the question, I don't know if the state government's going to listen to one dang thing I said, but at least we got it down there. I think the rapport that, not the rapport's the wrong word, the openness that Reardon McClain showed, it needs to be mentioned. I don't know if he has the answer. I don't know if the people who are running the legislature, and he's only part of it, have the answer. But I know he listened and was very encouraging, and at least that's a first big step. So, we'll kind of see what comes out and works through the legislature, but I'll stop having said all of that and go to a question. It's got to be more interesting than me pitching for Reardon McClain. How boring is that, huh, man?
Yeah, I do have a couple more questions here that I wasn't able to see a few minutes ago, so I apologize.
Yeah.
This one comes from Susie. She asked if the city income tax deadline will be extended.
That is an excellent question, and all my rambling, thanks for bringing me back. The short answer to that is, and we made it clear to the legislators. It was asked of the governor today. That filing deadline needs to be changed by the legislature. I don't think they need Mayor Tom O'Leary to tell them that, but ours is tied into the states, and so keep an eye open. When the state moves to match the feds, which is their intent, then we'll be in a position to move ours. We don't have the authority to move it on our own, and it's too long of an answer. Only Mr. Stepro or a couple other local government nuts would want to get into the details of that. So I'll just leave it there and say, yeah, we hope to move it back to July 1st, and that's all I can say on that. And if not, I'm gonna really implore our local auditor and Rita to waive any kind of penalties or something if the General Assembly doesn't move that back for us. Okie-doke.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. A couple more questions, jumping back to the stay-at-home order.
Yeah.
First off, can you clarify whether or not parks are open?
Nah, parks are closed. We're really compliant. I don't know. I know we're going to follow the rules on this and try to err on the side. And it's going to be an awful boring summer if we can't use that new park. I don't know if anybody ever got a bicycle for Christmas, but that's a torturous experience because we got something new and then you gotta have it set around for a few months before we can use it. So, all our parks are closed. I don't know what sort of ripple effect that will have, and you can count on us to follow the governor as it relates to that. I don't want to be some sort of little league coach who knows more about public health than the Ohio director of health, but we all know those little league or those softball coaches, they're out there. So we're going to follow what the state says. And oh crap, man, I get it. There was a lady. There's probably another question. There was a girl. I've been like on social media too much, but there was somebody, a young woman who was genuinely concerned about her prom and all that stuff. It's like, man, oh man. Even though I'm rapidly becoming in the old fart category, man, you really have quite a bit of compassion for that. So there are certain things that we're never going to get back, and it's let's hope it doesn't happen. But things like Kerrigan Myers, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? As hard as that person's worked, Braxton Tate, as hard as he's worked, he doesn't get to do that. You got to be kidding me. We have a mother who works at City Hall, whose son was going to be a state wrestling qualifier. He's a senior. Wow. So, anyways, back to the parks. We'll get them open as soon as possible. But we've got that beautiful park, and we're all itching to get back out there. But don't be a rebel. Pick something else, Do something else to be a rebel, but not that. Okay. Oh, also pay your utility bill. Don't be a rebel about that either. We'll all be sucking bad air. I don't know. People are more polished would say, oh, no, that's not the way to talk. Man, I don't know. I'm just going to be level with you the way I am. And if people don't pay their utility bill, you're going to, I don't know, we're going to take somebody up to a volcano and throw them in so this whole thing goes over. How does that sound? Actually, it would take them out to Amons and throw them in that. That might be worse than ending up in a volcano. Oh, well, never mind. Back to business.
Okay, just a last quick clarification on the stay-at-home ban.
Yeah.
For any workers that are still required to report to work, is there any special documentation required?
Nah, just have your passport out. No, we're really going to try not to come down. I held up short about making some sort of inappropriate ethnic joke. But nah, man, if businesses want to be jerky about it and be open and sneak around, I'm not sure we're going to spend a lot of time on that. Our emphasis on police will be making sure that the real rat finks among us, the habitual criminals, don't see this as an opportunity. And I'll spare you my concern about the public health and shutting everything down, because I don't want to get into that, but those people who are drug addicted, they're craving just as much. And so one of the things we're going to try to make sure is that we don't have any kind of spurt in property crime because somebody who is addicted loses a more traditional, more conventional, more honest, if you will accept that way of earning a living. And that desperation will win out. So, all right, there's got to be another question. I don't mean to be such a downer about that, but our cops are not going to be out there looking to get people for traffic violations and that sort of negative stereotype. They're really there to protect your property and to keep an eye out, whether it's uptown or in other neighborhoods, to make sure that those unscrupuled, non-moral folks among us don't go out and start ripping each other off. So, I don't know, y'all. I might just have to lock my back door. So I think it'll cause us to change a lot of stuff. But let's not lose the reasons that we're in Galleon and get all too worked up. So, we got anything else?
Nope, that is all for tonight.
Hey, if there's anyone out there, popular demand, that wants to hear me talk about why I think the war analogy is so off, I'd stay on for a while. But chances are nobody wants to hear about what Tom O'Leary thinks about using the war. But I really respect those among us who had to fight in a war. And I apologize to the extent that people who fought in live combat know what a war is, and this ain't no war. But we need to be serious about it. I don't know. Anyways, let's stop it at that. Thank you for the people who fought in the war. Oh, we got another question?
Just a quick clarification.
All right, if I blather on, no. What?
When you say parks are closed, are we referring to the entire park or just playground areas?
No, man, you can't. What do you mean, like drive through it?
Or walk around?
No, man, you can drive through it, and the playground areas are... Yeah, there are. Yeah, we don't want people on the playground equipment. We aren't going to be able to, not going to run around and clean them off. Common sense is. I saw that the politicians. Oh, it's just common sense. Boy, that's a jokester, isn't it? Common sense. The whole thing is past common sense. But, anyways, now to clarify, stay off the playground equipment. You're walking your dog through, that's cool. Make sure you clean the dog stuff up. But, yep, that's it. Any other questions?
No, we're good.
It is real important. I had heard something. I guess this is day 8. We got another week. See what the president does. I think independent of that will be what the governor does. But I share your concerns about the impact this is going to have on everyone in terms of the economy. And I sure don't want any more people to get sick. So I don't guess, without telling people to go pray, that's not what I mean, man. If you're a prayer, pray, and, I think we'll probably come out on the other side. But a small town like this does not have the ability to take too many concussions from the type of depth charges that we may face. So I'm going to stick around as long as I can and work as hard as I can to avoid all the work that we've done to get the city on good financial condition. We're going to do everything we can to keep that intact, and with your help, we're going to get through it, and Galleon will continue to be strong. Well, I don't know how often I'm going to do this. We're definitely going to do it a couple times a month. I don't know what to predict in terms of regularity of a council schedule, but we'll try to keep you informed. I don't think you don't want to hear from me every day, but I think what we'll try to do is have a sense of knowing when it's time to come on, either through the Talk About Galleon window or through our own website, to let people know we'll be on to talk about issues and or do questions and answers. If people are watching this, or we're watching, or we'll watch it over the next couple of days, want to hear more from the health department, I mean that sincerely. If you got questions, we can bring Trish back on. I know that that's their objective, to inform the public so that we keep each other safe. So, all right, I'll sign off. My wife's probably at home thinking, man, will you just shut up and get home? So, all right, honey, I'm on my way. See you. Good night.